everybody, and welcome to this brand new spoiler review for episode 1 of Picard season 3 here from the
Geek
Buddies.
Engage.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh!
Perfect. We're going to be riding in and talking about Picard season 3. We are the Picard guys of the three of us, so you're going to get 2/3 of the Geek Buddies talking about this stuff. Shannon's really not a big Picard person or Star Trek person. He's not.
Shannon's
okay.
sci-fi. Shannon likes sci-fi that goes boom. He doesn't like sci-fi that makes you think.
You said that. I didn't. I'm not going to co-sign that in any way, shape, or form.
Just saying. Star Trek is a gentleman's sci-fi.
Oh, well, don't you think he's had the occasional scotch, had the occasional cigar sitting in his smoking jacket in the
he's like a kid who sneaks into his dad's study and pours some scotch. He drinks it, but he doesn't drink it. You know what I'm saying?
I'm
gonna get in so much trouble for everything I'm saying, except he's not gonna know unless you guys tell him, because he's not gonna watch this review because he's not a Star Trek guy.
He's not a Star Trek guy. He's the guy that pulls down the sci-fi books and just flips to the explosions. That's a great point, Mike, for sure. But we're going to get into it. See, season 3 is back. So many people who are critics were able to get access to these episodes early, and as early as 3 to 4 months ago, Mike, I was hearing from a number of people that this season was going to be the best season of Picard, that the last 2 seasons, everybody knows the last 2 seasons were a little uneven. Certainly that second season almost universally feels like a bit of a letdown. First season, I think you could debate it back and forth. But everyone was saying, en masse, these critics were saying how incredible this season was, and they were waiting for this thing to drop. And it finally dropped just yesterday as we're recording this review here. And so we're going to jump into it and break it all down and talk about it. And look, both Mike and I are next generation. Mike's much more next generation than I am, so we might miss some Easter eggs. We might miss some allusions to things. So just letting you know that right off the bat. And if that's an issue for you, then we apologize. And maybe you could help us by leaving comments down below about anything we might have missed in terms of Easter eggs as we go along.
I think I could tell you where most of the Easter eggs are, but this team went so deep that I can't tell you where each thing is from. Like, I know the big things, but like part of season 3 is they were like, you want nostalgia? We got your nostalgia. Like, they're going hard. They're going hard in one episode.
So for sure, you want nostalgia? We got it. So yeah. So like I said, I'm going to do my best to hit them where I can, but we're going to break this thing down because essentially this is a table setting episode. Well, actually, Michael, let's get your thoughts overall. Seasons 1 and 2 of Picard. What are your thoughts coming out of this? And so, what was your mentality going into this opening episode, The Next Generation, here for season 3 of Picard?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think season 1 of Picard has a lot of really great stuff. I mean, they really went for like some big story, like tying the state of the Romulan Empire in Picard to the J.J. Abrams Star Trek reboot and what happens with Spock. Who's Scott? I don't even know who Scott is. With Spock. And then, everything they did with sort of the Borg sort of trying to work through being Borg and kind of becoming their own species, and the Tal Shiar with the Romulans. Like, they really went big. And at the end, I don't know that they quite stuck the landing, but you were sort of like, okay, you went for big sci-fi, and I appreciate it. Man, season 2 of Star Trek of Picard almost broke me by the end. That was like, I was slogging through the swamps of sadness to get to the end of that season. It was rough. Like, it was not great.
Yeah.
And they clearly all sat in a room and said, guys, what are we going to do? Season 2, I think we might have lost people. And they said, bring them all in. Like, we're going full. Let's just make this the final season of Next Generation. And at least so far, it seems to be working for them. I mean, this episode, to your point.
Overall thoughts.
Overall thoughts. It was, just overall thoughts, getting broad strokes. You're right. It is kind of a table setting episode. It's just letting us know what's going on, what we're going to be going after, kind of. But it was fun. It was sweet. There's kind of an overarching mystery to it.
Yeah.
And they are, and as I said, going hard in nostalgia, not just Next Generation nostalgia, but like Star Trek, the motion picture, like all the Star Trek movies, like they are putting a stake in the ground and saying, guys, we know did I say Star Wars? We know Star Trek, and I'm all over the place. It's been a long day of writing. They're like, we know Star Trek, and we are giving you like peak Star Trek is what they're going for. Now, whether they do that all through season long, critics who have seen it seem to think they are. But so far, I'm on board. I'm excited.
I always feel like, when you're looking at new Trek, I always feel like, they tried. All these people came to it and they tried to do something new and update it and do take the franchise into new areas, to boldly go where no one's gone before, in essence, with the franchise here in these multiple TV series that have come out, both Picard and Star Trek Discovery, Lower Decks. They're trying to expand the brand of the franchise, from Prodigy as well. So all these things are trying to push against what had been very clearly what people wanted, for the most part, what people wanted. And so there have been people who love the new Trek for sure and defend the new Trek, are into the new Trek. And there have been some of the older fans who are like, hate the new Trek and want the old Trek. And certainly Strange New Worlds was able to kind of bring everybody together back into the fold, kind of like Mandalorian did for Star Wars when there was so much friction after Last Jedi and the Rise of Skywalker, brought kind of people back to enjoying it. And so this feels like, already from the first episode, this feels like, okay, we're going back to the basics here. We know you guys had issues with seasons 1 and 2, and certainly season 2. So we jettisoned most of the crew from the first 2 seasons and most of the people involved. We're going to bring the next generation. We've kept a couple of the crew members, 7 and 9 and Raffi, and of course Picard. And then we're going to see what we're going to make out of all of that and how we're going to weave everything together. But yes, the whole next generation has come back, and we're bringing in next generation villains, and former antagonists are going to be part of all this, along with, of course, Amanda Plummer's character whenever she appears in the series. So I think that's what you got from this opening episode here is, okay, we know what you wanted. We're going to give it to you gleefully, and we're going to put in all kinds of stuff here to get you excited and then see how you feel about it. Because certainly a lot of the music cues that were very reminiscent of Next Generation, there are a lot of those props that are referencing things from Next Generation as well, Michael. And I think they absolutely got you back into feeling like, hey, we get it. We know what you want. This is going to be another season of Next Generation.
I will say, to your point about Strange New World, just before we dive into Picard, I know most of the people who are listening to us on this podcast are, the older age of geeks, not the kids out there. But I'm going to tell you, you should all, while we're waiting for the next episode of Picard to come out, go give Star Trek Prodigy a try. It's one of the ones that a lot of people haven't tried as much because it's the Nickelodeon kid version. Yeah. It's about a bunch of aliens. I watched the first couple episodes and I was like, okay, I get what this is, and I didn't pick it up. But when season 2 dropped, I dove in and watched it, and I'm going to tell you, it's up there with Strange New Worlds for me as doing some really, really fun Star Trek stuff. It tells a really good Star Trek story. It balances what a lot of the new Star Treks don't manage to do so well, which is there is a big overarching story that kind of connects the entire 2 seasons, but they do a lot of really fun standalone, we're on this planet, there's a weird entity, things are getting crazy, like Prodigy, don't sleep on Prodigy. Go check it out. That's what I'm saying. As you're waiting for us and the next episode of Picard to drop, and you're kind of wanting to scratch that little Federation itch. Yeah. Go check it out.
There you go. All right. You know what? You talked me into it. All right. Let's dive into this thing. The Next Generation. We're going to, as I said, going to break it up into 2 storylines. We'll take a break in between the 2 storylines. And there we go. So we start in the 25th century. By the way, the font there, very similar to the opening of Wrath of Khan, which started in the 23rd century. So I love that we got that reference there. Got right off the bat. We see Beverly Crusher, Dr. Beverly Crusher here on this ship. The ship, I think the USS Helios. She's talking with the ship's computer. They get attacked. They get boarded. She kills the 2 intruders that board. She gets shot. We hear a crew member banging on the door who's been either locked out of a room or locked into a room. And then she sends a message to Picard. Picard is there, hanging out there with what's the
Laris?
Sorry, say it again.
Laris.
Yeah, Laris. That's what I was going to say. Hanging out with Laris, having a conversation about the past, about legacy, and all these things. And he gets a message. She's going to be going off to Chaltok 4. he gets a message on his old badge there, and he says before then that he wants a new adventure. He doesn't want to deal with legacy. And on his communicator badge, he hears something, pulls it out, the computer brings it up, and we see that it's a message from Beverly Crusher. She has sent him a message. She says, "Don't trust Starfleet." She says, and she says that this is all going to be involved here about the hell. She mentions the Hellbird, and she says to trust no one. He talks about Laris. And he reveals that they haven't talked in 20 years, him and Dr. Crusher, which is really interesting, and that she cut everybody off 20 years ago. Everybody, which is kind of a bit of a shock here. He goes to see Riker. Riker and him have a fun conversation about the past, about, the number one stuff and drinking all this. And he tells him about the message. They can't use Starfleet ships. So Riker thinks he's got a workaround, and he kind of hails the USS Titan. They get on the Titan. 7 of 9 is there, who is now going to be addressed differently, Commander Annika Hansen, because Captain Shaw demands this, played by Todd Stashwick, who's so good here. And Picard has a fun little inspection moment. They head to the bridge. We get to that Next Generation music, which is really nice. Then we meet Sydney LaForge, or Crash LaForge, as Riker knows her, so LaForge's daughter there. They set up the ship to take and have a fun exchange about how much protocol has changed since Picard was aboard the ship, because they take it out of dock there with 7 of 9 leading the way. They go to dinner with Captain Shaw, and he's already started eating. And this is all dick measuring stuff that happens at the table here. Shaw is very much a guy who believes there's a certain way to be a Federation officer, and he sees Riker and Picard as like these cowboys, these yahoos who violate the rules, and he's very much about the rules. And he basically dismisses them at the end, walks out on his own, says he's not going to take them to the Rhyton system, not going to take them to where they need to go. Well, while Shaw's asleep, 7 of 9 calls up Riker and Picard to the observation deck. They reveal what the message is from Crusher. She has taken him to the Rhyton system. They escape on a space shuttle, head over to the ship there, Helios. Riker comes in with Picard. Picard is looking ahead of Riker. Riker eventually gets subdued by that person that was kind of locked out by Crusher. When they come through the door there, where Picard is noticing that Beverly's in a med cube there, or whatever you call that thing, the med container. They turn around and
stasis.
There you go, medical stasis. Then it turns around and convinces him to lower his phaser, tells him who they are. And Riker, because he's a jerk, takes a little elbow shot to the young kid. And we find out that the young kid reveals that he is Beverly Crusher's son. Yet another Crusher is in existence here, and they end with the ship being attacked or being descended upon, this massive, awesome-looking ship, and that's how the episode ends. But that's that storyline. We'll deal with the Raffi one after this one. So this is the main storyline here. Michael, what did you think about all of this? I mean, Picard talking about legacy, him and Riker exchanging, banter, the back and forths. Riker alluding to the fact that Deanna might be happy to have him out of the house for a little while, and his daughter as well. And then we meet LaForge's daughter. We see them come upon Shaw, who's a bit of a hard ass, but 7 of 9 conflicted about where she belongs in the Federation or not. So, and by the end, she helps them. She breaks the rules, helps them get to where they're going to crush her ship, and then we find out the son. So, what did you think about how this all went down in this first episode overall?
Okay, well, first of all, let's just talk about the Star Trek nostalgia of all of this.
Yes.
Before we even get into the story, because there's just so much of it. Please. To your point, opening up with the 25th century sort of Chiron is 100% Wrath of Khan. And even the jacket that Beverly Crusher is wearing looks like the jackets from Star Trek 2 and Star Trek 3. So everything about this is setting up to be like, hey guys, remember when Star Trek told like some really good stories right there in the middle there? Like let's hit that moment. And the opening pan where you're just panning across all your stuff. You were seeing the flowers that were from Crusher's room. You're seeing the drama masks because she was into theater. You're seeing like there is just and like there's some deep cuts. Like there's things that I had to go look up and be like, the fuck is that? Like it's basically saying, hey, remember Next Generation? We remember Next Generation and we remember it better than you do. Yeah. So lots of stuff there. And then throughout the entire arc of this, in addition to just like the music cues. I mean, they lean really heavily on the First Contact theme, which is not only the best Next Generation movie, but arguably one of the best Star Trek movies, period, and 100%. Has just an amazing, amazing score. But it's also just giving you hints of the Wrath of Khan score, hints of, it's feeling very like this is peak Star Trek.
Yeah.
The space station they go to looks just like the space station that ILM built for the Star Trek movies. Like just across the board, it is just like giving you all these little nods to what a lot of people feel are the best moments. Even the plan that Picard and Riker have, where they're going to go on and the Admiral's going to come on the ship and do an inspection, is what Admiral Kirk was doing in the beginning of Wrath of Khan, I believe.
Yeah, he was inspecting the ship, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, they're just giving you nods, particularly to the Wrath of Khan. Biggest nod of Wrath of Khan comes in the story at the end of this arc, but I'm assuming that it's the biggest nod to Wrath of Khan. But throughout all of this, it's really great. And in addition, I think they've locked onto something that's really fun, because when you're telling a story within the world of a show that also reflects sort of the outside reality, and the outside reality is Next Generation was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And a lot of people like me, like John said, I became a Star Trek fan through Next Generation. And those adventures back in the day were great. And First Contact was great. Nemesis and Insurrection, not so great.
Right.
And now all the cast is older and they've moved on and they're doing the things that they're doing, and the first 2 seasons of Picard were uneven. So having Picard have a conversation with Laris about legacy, where he kind of doesn't love living in this world of what he did and he wants to have one more great adventure, when we are actually watching the crew of Next Generation going on one more big adventure, is really kind of fun thematically. Like, I think it's kind of fun, and as long as it continues to be a fun adventure, that's really great. I mean, even the fact that Beverly Crusher sends Picard an encoded message to his communicator from his captain's uniform from Next Generation before he became Admiral, like, they are just going hard.
Yeah.
The other great thing that I think makes this episode a lot of fun is, I think Frakes and Stewart are having a blast together.
Holy crap.
The two of them at this age in their career have an ease to their relationship that feels a lot like the original cast did when they were in some of those later movies. Even the movies that weren't that great. Yeah. Watching DeForest Kelley, Leonard Nimoy, and William Shatner just be old dudes together, there was something kind of comforting about that. And the two of them in the bar talking about everything, like, it feels kind of nice. And when Picard is kind of explaining, oh, I'm not sure what this is, these coordinates aren't anything, Riker brings up this whole adventure that never actually happened in Next Generation, but kind of says that when Picard was Locutus of Borg, they all went on this adventure and the Enterprise had some computer virus and this is how they figured out how to do it. So something that's totally new, made up, didn't actually ever happen, but sounds like it could have happened. Yeah. And it gives them the coordinates they need. And then going to this ship, the Titan, to do the big inspection, and they're just basically lying their way onto this ship, which is kind of fun. And then having 7 of 9 there, really kind of fun. The whole, is it Shaw is the captain?
Yeah, Captain Shaw, yeah.
I love a dick captain.
Of course.
I love a dick captain. Like, there is something great about having that character that the second that they come on screen, you can hate them. And with Shaw, even before he comes on screen, you hate him, because most of 7 of 9's arc through Voyager and even into Picard was this character who was struggling to accept who she was now. Yeah. That she's not Annika Hansen anymore. She is 7 of 9. And that is not necessarily a bad thing. That even though she went through this trauma at the hands of the Borg, she is now this new person, and her trauma and her experience with the Borg is also a part of who she is. So having this sort of asshole captain say, no, you're Annika Hansen, you can even see Jeri Ryan, the way she's playing it, kind of struggle with that. Yeah. So you automatically hate this guy right off the bat. And of all the cast that they kind of moved past from Picard, I'm glad that Jeri Ryan is still there, because I'm a Voyager guy and I love seeing 7 of 9.
Yeah.
And I think the Borg are awesome. You're right. That whole scene in the dinner was just dick measuring. It's him just being an asshole, but you're also getting this information of, like, the way that the Enterprise is seen. Like, we love Star Trek because the captains of our ships always take these big risks and do crazy things and rip apart space-time and ram into shit. But his, like, look, I know that you guys with your crashes, sometimes intentional, sometimes unintentional, blah, 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 blah. And then for him to put them in bunk beds.
Bunk beds. That's so emasculating, man.
So emasculating.
Oh my God.
Also, oddly, a kind of like somewhat reference to Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country, though, when DeForest Kelley and Captain Kirk are in the Klingon prison, and sleeping in the prison barracks, and they're in bunk beds, and they're having a whole conversation. So again, I think that this is just like deep cut after deep cut after deep cut. Yeah. The best part about 7 of 9 pulling those two out and being like, all right, tell me what the fuck is going on. And this is what makes me like her as a character. And I think this was a great choice, both for script expediency, but also for character, is the fact that she had already rerouted the ship. She didn't go to them and say, tell me what's up. And if I believe you and it makes sense, I'll reroute the ship.
Right.
She rerouted the ship without being asked because she's on team them, and then pulls them in and be like, all right, what the fuck, guys? Mm-hmm. And I also love that, she has an ease, and this is what I think they did do smart, even though I don't think seasons 1 and seasons 2 of Picard are home runs across the board, is that we've seen 2 seasons of 7 of 9 and Picard being very familiar with each other. Yeah. But Riker hasn't. And I thought it was really kind of fun the way that she's like, just tell me what the fuck is up. And he's like, hey, you don't talk to an admiral that way. Like, there's just like the interplay between all of them was like, okay, this is good. This is solid interplay. This makes sense. Yeah. So then they get there. They go over to the ship. They're trying to figure out what's going on and why Beverly Crusher was shooting the extras from the ballroom scene in Labyrinth. And they're trying to figure out what's going on. And then this guy comes out and they have the fight. Yeah. There's a whole altercation. And then Picard finds out that it's Crusher's son, and it is virtually exactly the same scene as Shatner in Star Trek Wrath of Khan, finding out that what's his face? What's the name?
David. David is his son. Yeah.
Yeah. Finds out that the guy is the doctor's son and that that's really his son. So even Picard's reaction to that, combined with the fact that Beverly Crusher cut off all contact with everybody about 20 years ago, and you look at this kid and you're like, yeah, okay, this seems to all track. Which I think is interesting because so many people through Star Trek The Next Generation, there was all those people that were like, is Wesley Crusher Picard's son? Is Wesley Crusher? And they kind of put that to bed. Like, there is a Jack Crusher, and he was one of Picard's best friends. And so that, that complicated his relationship with Beverly. So that wasn't true. But it does seem that somebody always thought that was a good idea. And now in Picard, they're going to make that story a reality, and that the two of them do have this now.
Even Lara said that, right? Didn't you guys try to have a relationship? And he's like, we tried, is the operative word there in that situation. You pointed out some really great things. You're absolutely right. All the references they're doing to the new school and old school Star Trek, it's really great for the Next Generation stuff, the original series, all of it. You're right. Absolutely. I mean, just these moments that you're picking up on, just either subtly or obviously pulling at DiCaprio and pointing at the screen type moments. Those are all so great things to like get you into the field and make you feel like, okay, they get it. They understand it. They love it the way we do, right? That's why people are loving the people who play the game are loving the Last of Us adaptation so much. It's because they see that the people creating this get it, get why people love that game. Same reason here, they get why people love Star Trek here. And I think also they're dealing with these overriding, which is one of the things I love about Star Trek and Star Wars sometimes, is the overriding philosophical concepts, right? This idea of, all right, legacy. What does it really mean? Do you really think Picard doesn't give a shit about his legacy? Of course he does. But but he also he wants to do something, and he's almost sitting in for the audience. Like, I want an adventure. I want an adventure. That's what I want. And what people want to see is an adventure with Picard. And, just like Apocalypse Now, there's a great line, Apocalypse Now, I wanted a mission, and for all my sins, they brought me one. And it almost seems like this is one of those things here with Picard where he is getting what he wants, but is it really what he wants by the end of the season? We shall see. So I like that you're getting that aspect of it all. And we're seeing the mementos and the old stuff. And he's right. As you get older, those mementos that you held on to so tight, I'm discovering this myself in my own life. It's like, you can let them go. You can you have the memories. That's what you have. And that's really the most important thing. These other things are just taking up space. But as long as they're in your mind, you'll always be able to relive it. So I like that he's kind of putting that stuff away, but someone from the past comes back to kind of reawaken everything, and what's this all going to mean? And you're right, Riker and Picard have such an easy back and forth. Another Star Trek reference is them on the ship when JERI is, Seven of Nine is steering that out of dock. That's something so out of the first two Star Trek movies. You know, the leaving space dock is such a big deal. But also,
even her Picard, Admiral Picard, letting her take the ship out is sort of like Kirk letting Kirstie Alley take,
letting Saavik take the ship out. But also where he quotes, or she quotes, or he asks, well, shouldn't we do this thing? And she's like, no, this is updated. It's all automated. We don't do that kind of stuff. And he's like, oh yeah, well, you're going to be a good captain one day. And Riker gives him shit by saying like, good recovery there, Admiral, or whatever he says there. And he's like, shut it, Will. And it's the same thing we see with Kirk in the situation there with Saavik later when Khan catches him with his pants down, and she was the one that was quoting regulations to him, and he ignored the regulations, and he says, you go on and keep on quoting regulations. You were right, you know. So there's that sense of like, if people were adhering to the rules and not adhering to the rules, when to do it, when not to do it. Because you're right also about what you were saying about Shaw. They're having been in the military. Yes, the people who escape in those missions and break the rules, it's a great story to tell. It's a great book to tell. But most militaries, and I'm sure the Federation, does not like people breaking rules. There's a reason there's structure, because it works better with structure. And although you may be beloved by the people enjoying your stories, to the people who adhere to structure, you're a threat to them. And so we see that with Shaw. He sees them as threats. He probably suspects they're coming on the ship to screw him over in some way. So it's going to be very interesting how this plays out now, because Shaw's supposed to be a big part of the season. How is he going to react to 7 of 9? And it seems, Michael, like the crew of the ship likes 7 of 9 more than they like Shaw.
Well, how could you not?
Exactly. And so you see the reaction when he says to lock the ship down and this is the end of your career and you better write me a report. The entire ship is, you see them all kind of,
you can sort of see, yeah. The other thing I was going to say about Shaw, though, I mean, because you are right, like the military doesn't like it's a great story, but it doesn't necessarily make for great officers. But also, and this is a big part of dick swinging and people sort of like, people like Shaw, is he's intimidated by them.
Yes, he is.
You know, I mean, he can't do what they do. These guys are legends. Yeah. And, you know, and being a legend, and this is what I think is interesting, and if the show can maintain this sort of conversation, I think it's really interesting. Like, being a legend is a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Because being a legend means you did a bunch of shit, but it also means you're not doing it now. So, like, even Riker and Picard in the bar, when they're talking about this frontier day and 250 years of boldly going where no man has gone before, which I did look it up, like 250 years from when Picard is happening, 250 years before is about Scott Bakula taking out the Enterprise, which the less said about that, the better. But that is about, like, that's frontier day is sort of encompassing all of that. Yeah. Again, just like a massive play at nostalgia, which not in a bad way, but just in like kind of like looking back at where they've been.
Right.
But yeah, like, so Picard and Riker, you know, they're past their prime. They're not the ones that are out there doing it anymore. And Shaw is the one that is out there doing it, but he's not doing what they did. Right. And he knows that. And so he's going to do everything he can to sort of make himself feel bigger and puff himself up. And again, like I said, which is a great character to have in a story like this.
Yeah, yeah. We'll see what the Titans' role is going to be in all of this as well. And if by the end of the season, Shaw is one of these guys that gives them their begrudging respect, because the whole reason he's been so strict is for other reasons from his past or from his upbringing that might get explored here as this all plays out, for sure. Let's hit some of these Easter eggs real quick, Mike. We talked about the Chiron there at the beginning. Also, we hear notes from Jerry Goldsmith's First Contact score here at the beginning, which is pretty cool. And the song that plays at the beginning is I Don't Want to Set the World on Fire by the Ink Spots. Very interesting, is the last two seasons we had Big Crosby's Blue Skies, and season 2's Time Is on My Side. Interesting references there. Well, as far as go ahead.
Also, and this is so deep, and I am not taking credit for this. I saw it online. I guess Brent Spiner recorded an album, a jazz album, at some point.
Oh, really?
And had 4 backup singers called the Something Spots, and it was and it was like Michael Dorn, Patrick Stewart, LeVar Burton, and maybe Jonathan Frakes, I remember. So even the use of that song from that group might be sort of a reference to an album that that I don't know that any of us need to listen to, but it's there if you want it.
He can sing. He was in that 1776 revival that was on Broadway there. As far as the Helios ship, we have Beverly's pearls from The Big Goodbye, her flowers from Cause and Effect, as you mentioned. The drama and comedy masks might be references to the Nth Degree, Frame of Mind, Disaster, and Fistful of Datas. Also, there's a very deep cut here, according to Den of Geek, with an award that says Cora Caroli 5, Medical Away Team, Honorary Citizens. This is a classified mission, which we never saw, that Jean-Luc spoke of in the episode Allegiance. So
there was someone who was on the Enterprise who was an imposter.
Yes,
who said something about that mission, and he was like, "That's a classified mission. That's how you would have known about it." So again, like I said, some very deep cuts.
Yes, and she's listening to his captain's log, which is from Best of Both Worlds, referencing to the Enterprise hiding in a dust cloud. All right, is that going to foreshadow something? We shall see. We also get Romulan ale sitting on the ship. That's also a Star Trek 2 reference,
which is illegal, at least in Star Trek 2.
It is illegal. That's right. Picard's painting of the Enterprise D is what they're talking about there with him and Laris. The Resican flute, which he makes a big deal of rolling around with in his hands, the inner light is from the Inner Light. The Promelian battle cruiser, it's in a bottle. That's from Booby Trap. There's a Golden Enterprise D model, a huge Bajorian symbol, and the Kurlan Niskos from the Chase is in there as well. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff here when you look at this whole situation that I think is so funny. And great to have them be a part of this for sure.
And we also, and just speaking of legacy and stuff, I mean, we mentioned Crash LaForge, Geordi's daughter, appearing in the episode, but also he says to Laris, when you do see his painting of the Enterprise D, that he's thinking of giving it to Geordi, who works at a museum. So when we do catch up with Geordi, he's working at a museum, which is literally a place where you put artifacts from a long time forgotten time. So again, when you're dealing with this idea of legacy, I think that is also an interesting choice.
Yes, agreed. And that's what they're talking about in Star Trek 2, because Kirk is going through getting older and he's become an admiral. But Spock tells him, if you want my honest opinion, your first and best place, or the first and best thing you ever did, was to be a captain of a ship. That's where you belong the most.
Yep.
And when him and Bones are having that Romulan ale for his birthday, they're talking about it. He goes, why does it feel like your birthday is a funeral? Like, you know, you're being put out to sea, that you're becoming.
Damn it, man.
These relics. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So there's the reference there throughout it as well, which I think is pretty cool. Plus, them taking off on the shuttle near the end is so similar to Kirk taking off on the shuttle there with Scotty in Star Trek the motion picture. So there's a lot more stuff, but like, you know, we don't want to drown it with all the references.
But I also think it's you know, we've been saying nostalgia a lot, and a lot of times when people say that like shows are a nostalgia play or they're just relying on nostalgia, they're saying that's all that's there. And I think that here, almost by nature of the fact that these cuts are so deep, this isn't stuff that you have to know to enjoy the episode. It's not stuff that's super important, but it's just, this is a show about legacy. And it's about a legacy of the characters within the world of the Federation, like I said, but it's also kind of a show, and this is probably what Picard always should have been. This is a show about the legacy of Next Generation. And I think that this season feels, at least in this first episode, that that's the direction they're going in, and I think that's a smart move on their part.
Yeah, agreed. All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll jump into the other storyline here on the show with Raffi right after this.
I'm not doing it. I'm not channeling.
Anyway, all right. So, Mike, this is an interesting story. I mean, Raffi, one of the remaining original members of Picard from season 1 here. They give her a storyline. She is undercover here for the Federation. She is strung out. It seems, well, she's playing like she's strung out here, and she's trying to get information about these stolen weapons, and worried that it's going to lead to some kind of terrorist attack. She meets up with this dude who she ends up giving all her money to in order to get a little bit of information. So she wants to get back in with the Federation. That's her story to this guy. And he gives her the Red Lady, and then kind of kicks her out and says, don't ever come back here again. She reaches out to her handler, and we find out that she's working undercover there, and she has a back and forth on the ship. And it's very interesting. Who is the handler? It's a mysterious person. We don't know. The person doesn't want to do a face-to-face. And if Raffi keeps pushing, and then eventually the person brings up Raffi's record and all the mistakes that she's made and all the insubordination that she's been a part of and the substance abuse, we also hear that she says this to the dude there at the bar, that her and her girlfriend broke up. So her and 7 of 9 are not together. So how's that going to play into all of this as we see them in 2 separate storylines, at least to start off this season? And eventually the handler is like, you got to figure this out. You're a warrior. Them stealing the weapons, this is an act of war. Do what a warrior does. Eventually, she figures out that the Red Lady is actually a statue that is being commemorated here. It's connected to Frontier Day. She flies out to this area, and she's trying to communicate, trying to let them know that a terrorist attack is imminent. No one responds back, and then she sees it happen, almost Thanos style, with 2 different portals there. The thing goes out one portal and then through another to actually damage the entire city, and she witnesses all of it, being unable to stop it. So, Mike, what are your thoughts on this storyline here? A subplot, in essence, going on at the same time as the other main storyline in this episode.
I mean, look, Raffi is a perfectly fine character. She's not nearly as interesting as the Next Generation cast in 7 of 9, but I think they did a really good job here. Where if you've watched the first 2 seasons, opening the scene up with her sort of strung out, looking for drugs, if you know that she had a substance abuse problem, that she's struggled with the relationship she has with her son, with all these things, you think, like I thought at the beginning, I was like, oh, okay, I guess, man, she's really come down hard after season 2. I see that the reception of season 2 really affected her a lot. I guess she got really upset with what the online chat rooms were saying. And then to sort of pull a fast one on us and see that she's really undercover, but then to still see that she's tempted because she's got these drugs in her hand, and you see the moment where and she puts it away, which is good, but they do it's a great job of sort of paying off a character if you've been watching, but if you've not been watching, you get all you need to know. That combined with her handler showing her all the issues that we need to know about her in a nice little PowerPoint presentation, kind of like gets you all caught up on all you need to know about Raffi for this season. So I think that was really, really smart. The fact, I forget the name of the institute where Alison Pill worked, but but she mentioned that there's an offsite of that. It starts with a D. The Daystrom Institute. Daystrom, thank you. Yeah, the Daystrom Institute. She mentions that the offsite Daystrom Institute, which is not the one that we've seen in Okinawa, but is actually offsite somewhere, that someone's been stealing weapons from there. So that's clearly a big, keep your eye on that. That's going to come back. People are stealing weapons from a really important location. And then, this whole idea of the Red Lady. So what is that about? Like, just setting up a nice mystery as well as some nice character stuff. When we see her back on the ship, we see her looking at pictures at hollows of her granddaughter, I believe. And that like I said, she has a bad relationship with her son, so that's a fractured thing. And then this mystery of who the handler is, and then this whole search for the Red Lady. Now, this is my second favorite. My first favorite cut of Star Trek is basically setting up that Picard and Crusher have a son in the exact same way that you set it up in Star Trek 2. So I think that is just like chef's kiss as far as using nostalgia to tell a good story. My second favorite is that the Red Lady is a statue of Rachel Garrett. And Rachel Garrett, for you nerds out there, was the captain of the Enterprise C, which is the Enterprise before the Enterprise D, obviously, that appeared in probably one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation, Yesterday's Enterprise, where the Enterprise from 22 years before Next Generation comes through some kind of weird time portal and changes history, and the Star Trek Enterprise turns into a warship. And they're at war with the Klingons, so like Worf disappears, and Tasha Yar comes back, and there's this whole crazy story. But the whole big point of it, without getting into the details of an episode that has nothing to do with Picard, is that Rachel Garrett ended up, the Enterprise C was destroyed, defending the Klingons from a Romulan attack ship, and that act of honor is one of the key things that created peace between the Klingons and the Enterprise. Or the Klingons and the Federation. So The fact that they're doing a statue to honor Rachel Garrett makes sense because she was a key figure in bringing peace to the Federations and the Klingons, and that's a big deal. Right. That's why we get Worf, so yay for her. So I think, it's interesting, and now whether any of that is going to play into anything, I don't know, or it's just another really, really fun Easter egg. Yeah. And then the other Easter egg, just because we've seen it in trailers, is that when Raffi is looking at all of the things and trying to see the important events that are coming along, we see an image over on the right side of the screen of the Enterprise F, which would be the Enterprise that came after the Enterprise D, and that we see it is set up to be decommissioned. And because we've all watched the trailers for Picard, we know that at some point that ship that is set up to be decommissioned is not going to be decommissioned and is going to be used by some people. And so it looks like we are going to have our crew on some form of an Enterprise sometime this season.
Yeah. We also hear when we're at the dinner about DS4 versus DS11. DS4 has been shut down for a year. What does that mean? DS11 is the one they meant to say. Okay, what are we going with that? Very curious. Also, when you look at the ships, the Voyager B is on there too when she's rifling through, the computer's rifling through all those ships. So an interesting reference as well. Yeah. So, I mean, there's just so much that they front loaded into here, but it was so seamless. You don't need to catch all of it. But if you do catch it, it adds even more to your enjoyment. As you said, Michael, earlier, if you're doing fan service and that's all you're talking about come out of a show, you've done the wrong thing. If you're talking about the story and the fan service is the icing on top of the very good cake underneath, then you've done the right thing for sure. So, and also the end credits, Michael, our Next Generation end credits, the font, which apparently has not been used since 1994. So that is a really nice kind of touch that they are saying to them, look, this is a Next Generation season. Sit back and relax. This is what it's all about. So it's good. Now, as far as the Raffi thing, for me, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting character. I don't think they've really known what to do with Raffi over the first two seasons. I thought she was going to be a stronger character as the show went along, but then given her the substance abuse, they give her so much drama to deal with. She's almost, for those of you who are NYPD Blue fans, she's almost like the Andy Sipowicz of the fucking show, because Andy lost 2 wives, lost a son. Like, there's so much shit, lost a bunch of partners to death or to leaving. So there's so much they put him through in the show. They put Raffi through a lot of shit, both before the show starts in season 1 and after the show starts in season 1. And so to see her in this kind of situation, I hope they find a way to redeem her, put her back on track, strong, and then you can give her a send-off if you don't want to bring the character back. But for God's sakes, man, bring her back to level and let her kind of expunge her record of all the negative stuff and let her move on and be happy in her life.
It's interesting. And I know, and we talk about this. Anyone who watches our reviews knows, like, we always tease you about how you want to have backstories for every single side character, and how you want to have like a 9-hour episode where we know everybody's social security numbers and what they have for breakfast and what they have for lunch. But I do think, to your point about Raffi, it shows the difference between, look at like Raffi, they didn't really know. I think sometimes what happens is you write a Bible for a show and you're like, here's who the characters are and here's who this new cast is. And in the Bible, it all looks great. And then you get to writing the episodes and you're kind of like, where do we go from here? Like, what do they do? I don't really know. And you never quite know. And so sometimes what you do, okay, so she's got a bad relationship with her son. She's got a substance abuse problem. She and 7 of 9 have a relationship. Yeah. She's really upset because the Romulan died in the first episode of season 2. Like, you just keep adding stuff because you're like, well, if I keep adding stuff, they're going to become interesting. And they don't always become interesting. It's kind of finding those keys. It's not about giving someone a bunch of stuff to deal with. It's about seeing the interplay between people that really makes things come alive. So Raffi over here dealing with all the stuff she's dealing with, you're like, okay, this is interesting, but I'm not super intrigued. Whereas, like I was saying before, the scene with Riker and Picard in 7 of 9, where 7 of 9 made the decision before she even talked to them, and Riker's like, you don't talk to him like that. And like, there's like, without giving them a bunch of stuff, these 3 have such strong personality. Now, granted, it's a little bit unfair. They've been playing these characters a lot longer than Raffi has, so there's some history there.
And
but I just think it's she's all on her own. So, but I'm I've never disliked Raffi as a character. I just want to see what they do with her.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you. I've never disliked her, and I think the actress does a fantastic job with Raffi. It's just, what are you going to do with it? And I think that's what I hope they're going to figure out here as the season goes along. Because as I said, a lot of critics got to see the first 6 episodes and are just glowing about the show, and none of them mentioned, well, except for the Raffi storyline or anything like that. So that gives me hope that they're going to do something really good with the storyline and tie it in to the storyline that we saw. That is the bigger storyline in the show so far.
I mean, what I would love to see is kind of the same thing with that Riker 7 of 9. Like the fact that 7 of 9 and Raffi have a much different relationship to Jean-Luc than the crew of the Enterprise does. When Raffi does join up with them, if we see some of that friction, that could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Some conflict to overcome for sure. And I do like the fact that, you mentioned how Jonathan Frakes and Patrick Stewart are having a good vibe. It's great to see how JERI Ryan and Patrick Stewart's relationship has developed as actors in these roles as well over these first 2 seasons and then into this episode. Like you said, when she calls him up onto the deck, the back and forth here and the fact that they've both experienced being under the Borg's control, like there's just an inherent connection between both of them. So I like that.
Shaw's little jab at them for that.
Yeah,
that was great too. Ooh.
Right. Yeah. And Star Trek has always, because it's a little bit of a judgment call about your, somehow you're different or you're defective because you've been through this, right? And Star Trek has always addressed these kind of social issues from the original series on about people who are seen as different or others who have experienced things and made to feel ashamed about it. And so having that be an element of Shaw as the antagonist makes a lot of sense. And we'll see how that plays out and how he's probably going to be begging 7 of 9 to save him in a situation for sure and have to come to terms with his feelings about that whole thing himself. And who knows, we might get a Borg who takes him over. Who knows? It could be very interesting for him to experience that. All right, any final comments on this first episode here, Mike, the new Enterprise?
Yeah, I mean, Star Trek is always uneven. The original Star Trek cast in their movies, they had some good ones, and they had Star Trek V: The Voyage Home, or not? Which one? No, wait.
That is The Voyage Home. Yeah.
It is. Yeah. Whew. Then what
no,
is
Star Trek 4 is The Voyage Home. Star Trek 5 is The Undiscovered Country. That's what you're thinking.
No, that's Star Trek 6.
Come on now. Oh no.
What is Star Trek 5?
We got to cut this out. No way of leaving this in here.
We're not leaving it in. Leave it in.
Final Frontier. That's right.
There
it's so bad that I forgot the name of it. I mean,
it is, in our defense,
yeah,
it is pretty bad. But no, so I mean, I just think with Star Trek, the original cast, like they had their ups and downs for sure in those movies. But I think Undiscovered Country, the 6th one, was like a really great send-off for them.
It was.
And Star Trek Next Generation, as beloved as they are, man, their movies.
Yeah.
And for those that grew up loving this Star Trek, wanting to see them have one last big adventure that's the right send-off, that's really lovely. And so the fact that and when Picard came out, it was kind of like, okay, well that's kind of what this is a little bit, and it just never really rose to the occasion. And for this episode to sort of hit all those beats, and you really feel like the people behind it are really deep in their Star Trek knowledge.
Yeah.
It feels like we're shaping up to give the Next Generation cast that send-off that they really deserve. Mm-hmm. And I hope that that's what happens.
Yeah, I agree with every single one of your points and 100% feel that way as well. It's a great start. It almost feels like a completely different show. So if you were going to be, if you had issues with 2 or you had issues with 1, you can reinvest in this show. Clearly, they're going down the Next Generation route just from the opening title, the first episode of the season, referring to Next Generation. That gives you all the impetus you need to stay on this track if you've been a Next Generation fan and see what you got. And even if you haven't been a Next Generation fan, to discover these characters and enjoy them, because some of the joy of seeing these characters get older is seeing how they function with each other. That's why I love the original Star Trek series movies so much, all the way up until 6, is because I love their interplay. I love even on the terrible Star Trek 5, there are moments where him and Spock and Bones have some really nice back and forths, even though the film itself is not that great. But overall, that's what you like to see. So it's the Next Generation's turn to go through that with this cast. And I think already from the opening episode, we are in the right hands, and you're sensing the right amount of respect and the right amount of nostalgia for this that's going to put a smile on your face, going to put you through some shit. And then by the end, you're going to feel very satisfied that you got this season of Picard. as a de facto final season of the Next Generation. So but yeah, we'll be reviewing this as it goes along. Mike and I will be back to talk about it for sure and have some fun with it. So hopefully you enjoyed this review. We appreciate you all watching this review or listening to it. Always remember, we are a podcast feed on its own. In case you don't want to see our pretty faces, you just want to hear our voices, you can subscribe there. Yeah, Michael, you handle this stuff. What do we have to tell them? Please take it away.
Well, if you want to follow us, you can follow us on Twitter at Geek_Buddies. On Instagram, we are at _Geek_Buddies. If you want to follow John Rocha, he's at The Rocha Says. If you want to follow me, I am at MKToon. In addition to that, if you like this review and you want to help us continue to do what we do, here is what you can do for us. You can hit that like button below. You can subscribe to John Rocha's Outlaw Nation page and check out all the amazing content that he's got, including all of the amazing Geek Buddies episodes and spoiler reviews. Leave your comments below. How did this episode of Picard stack up to the previous seasons of Picard? How does it stack up to the rest of Star Trek? What is your favorite Star Trek, and what are you looking forward to in this season? If you are listening to us on a podcast, go ahead and leave us some comments and some stars so we go up in the rankings and more people can find us. And as always, the best thing that you can do is retweet this video, post it on your socials, send it to your friends, and tell them to hang out with your buddies, the Geek Buddies.
That's right. And of course, we are powered and sponsored by Carbon Health, so continue to head on over there for all your healthcare questions, concerns, or needs, carbonhealth.com, or download the app to have a doc in your pocket. Some of you may be new to the show, and Carbon Health has been with us for almost a year now, powering and sponsoring us going forward. They're great people, and they absolutely believe in creating healthcare plans that are specific to your body. They're also dialing in pretty hard recently on mental health stuff and mental health assistance for you all. So if that's something you're going through right now in your life, and I know there's no off season for that, please head on over there and have them help you out either virtually or in person. They're great people over there at carbonhealth.com. All right, y'all take care of yourselves. Be well, and we'll talk to you next time with another brand new spoiler review episode of Picard here from the
Geek Buddies.